Trump says the economy is recovering, but reports show GDP is crashing. Angry voters are calling into Washington Journal. The Supreme Court is considering bringing religion into public schools. So what is the truth? What is spin? And what is the real voice of the American people? I am Max Justice, and today we walk through three of the most revealing moments of the week. Three intersections between propaganda and reality, between power and justice, and between the America you're told about and the America you're actually living.
This is Washington Journal for Saturday, May 3rd. This week, several new reports on the U.S. economy were released, including a stronger than expected April jobs report and another showing the country's GDP fell in the first quarter of this year. Also, President Trump unveiled the 2016 White House budget request, which proposes cuts to non-defense discretionary spending and increased funding for defense. And the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in a case that could establish the country's first public religious charter school. Those are just a few of the stories C-SPAN has been following. And for the first hour of today's program, we're asking you, what's your top news story of the week? Here are the lines. Democrats, 202-748-8000. Republicans, 202-748-8001. And Independents, 202-748-8002. You can text your comments to 202-748-8003. Be sure to include your name and city. You can also post a question or comment on Facebook at facebook.com/cspan or on X at cspanwj. Good morning, and thank you for being with us. We will get to your calls and hear about your top story in just a few minutes, but first wanted to give you some more information on one of the top stories I just mentioned, and that is the April jobs report from CNBC. It says job growth was stronger than expected in April, despite worries over the impact of President Donald Trump's blanket tariffs against U.S. trading partners. Non-farm payroll increased a seasonally adjusted 177,000 for the month, slightly below the downward revised 185,000 in March, but above the Dow Jones estimates for 133,000, the Labor Bureau statistics reported on Friday. It also noted the unemployment rate. It says the unemployment rate held at 4.2% as expected, indicating that the labor market is holding relatively stable. The survey of households, which is used to calculate the jobless rate, showed an even stronger gain with an increase of 436,000 in those who reported holding jobs in the month. Another one of the reports is looked at the GDP and the first quarter results there. Also from CNBC, says the U.S. economy contracted in the first 3 months of 2025 on an import surge at the start of President Donald Trump's second term in office as he wages a potential costly trade war. Gross domestic product, which is the sum of all goods and services.
Washington Journal opened on May 3rd with what sounded like a harmless list of headlines. Job growth in April exceeded expectations. GDP in the first quarter dropped. President Trump's new budget was released. The Supreme Court heard arguments about public funding for religious charter schools. It was all presented like a normal broadcast. But for those who understand what's underneath, each headline was a warning. More jobs sounds good on the surface. 177,000 new jobs in April. Seems like progress, but when you see GDP contracting at the same time, you have to ask the real question. Where is the growth? Where is the money going? And who is paying the real cost? Yes, people have jobs, but are wages keeping up with the cost of living? Are businesses hiring just to stay afloat against rising import prices? Why is the economy shrinking while employment grows? Because the numbers are hiding the imbalance. Trump's sweeping tariffs have triggered a trade shock. Small businesses are struggling. Imports are more expensive, exports are slowing, and behind the nice numbers are losses piling up quietly. Meanwhile, Trump's budget slashes spending on education, health care, social safety programs, but increases military spending once again. This administration chooses guns over books, tax over school lunches, and yet the most alarming item isn't even about money. It's about the Supreme Court hearing a case that could allow public funds for religious charter schools. A public school that teaches theology, if passed. It would be the first time the federal government directly funds religious education. The issue isn't faith, it's principle. When the firewall between church and state is erased, religious freedom stops being right and starts being a political tool. Those of one faith might be favored, others pushed aside. You might think this doesn't affect you, but when public schools lack books, hospitals lack nurses, and at the same time, your government funds a Bible-based curriculum, you'll realize the priorities have flipped. Job growth, GDP decline, a budget that cuts the people, a court ruling that could fund religion. This is not a normal week in American politics. This is a warning. And if you don't see it, you might be the one who pays the price.
Reduced from January through March, fell at 0.3% annualized pace, according to a Commerce Department report Wednesday, adjusted for seasonal factors and inflation. This was the first quarter of negative payroll growth since Q1 of 2022. It was during a cabinet meeting on Wednesday that President Donald Trump was asked about the state of the U.S. economy and was asked about who gets credit or blame for its current state. Here's his response.
I don't view the stock market as the end all. It's an indicator. But what the stock market really tells you, and when you look at the stock market in this case, is it says how bad a situation we inherited. This was a quarter that we looked at today, and we took all of us together. We came in on January 20th. So this is Biden. And you could even say the next quarter is sort of Biden because it doesn't just happen on a daily or an hourly basis. But we're turning it around. It's a big ship to turn around. And we're going to have the greatest country financially in the history of the world, I believe. I think we're going to do things and we had to do it. We reset the table. We were being ripped off by every single country without exception. I'd have to really think hard for who hasn't taken advantage. And I don't even blame those countries. I blame the person that was sitting right here where I am for allowing it to happen, where our country was ripped off on trade, hundreds of billions of dollars. And now we're doing better than we've done in a long time. You know, we were losing $4 to $5 to even $6 billion a day on trade with Biden. And now we have it down to a very manageable number, and the tariffs, for the most part, haven't even kicked in yet. So that's the way. Stock markets, to me, are an indication, but the big indication is what's happening, and the people around the table know what's happening. Yeah.
Again, for this first hour, we are hearing on your top news story of the week. The lines: Democrats 202-748-8000, Republicans 202-748-8001, and Independents 202-748-8002. Some of the news stories, again, that we have been following this week include the GDP first quarter numbers, as well as the April jobs report. President Trump ordering the federal funding cuts to PBS and NPR. President Trump threatens Harvard's tax-exempt status. And President Trump releases the budget request, the White House budget request for 2026, as well as the Supreme Court hearing a case on.
At a cabinet meeting, President Trump took the microphone, he dismissed the stock market as irrelevant, blamed Biden for the economic collapse, claimed the administration inherited a broken system, and declared they were fixing it. But let's look at the facts. GDP is still down, wages are stagnant, trade remains volatile, and inflation is not under control. The president calls this turnaround, but the numbers call it turbulence. He speaks of greatness, but the people feel fatigue. Then the threats begin. He targets PBS and NPR, two of the last standing platforms for independent journalism. He threatens Harvard's tax status because the university dared to dissent. This isn't policy, it's punishment. The president is not proposing fiscal reform, he is enforcing political obedience. The budget for 2026 is not about economic health. It is about control, funding power, silencing criticism, turning public institutions into loyalists, and turning independent voices into enemies of the state. You may think this is just partisan rhetoric, but budgets speak louder than press conferences, and this budget screams vengeance.
Publicly funded religious charter schools, and a judge rules President Trump's use of Alien Enemies Act unlawful. Those are some of the stories we want to hear. If those are one of your top stories, or if there's something else that caught your eye, we will start with Donald in Golden Valley, Arizona, line for Democrats. Good morning, Donald.
Good morning. I'm just wondering why Trump wants all of our personal information from Social Security. And I'm 76 years old, and he don't have any right to that information. And another thing, Trump wants to cut money from the federal budget, but how about this big parade? And he wants to pull a Putin where they go by and salute him and all this other crap. How many millions of dollars is that costing? And I'm about sick of it. All right, bye.
That was Donald in Arizona. And Donald mentioned access to President Trump asking for access to Social Security information. It was a headline that came out yesterday. This is from the AP. Trump administration asked Supreme Court to let DOJ access Social Security systems. Let's hear from Ron in San Clemente, California, line for Republicans. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. Good morning, Tammy. Thanks so much for taking the call. A couple of things. Of course, the tariff story is about as exciting as you're going to get, because once he put his foot on the pedal there of the tariffs, it completely distorted all the markets throughout the world. So that was a good start for our president. I mean, what is that going to do except disrupt the natural flow of goods from now until who knows? And it doesn't matter if he rolls them back or not. Once you've started that, it's really a bad situation. And we can't let this go on like this. If the first 100 days were bad, think about the next 100. The next 100 are going to be even worse, because this guy he's a systems guy, and you have to give Trump his due. He understands systems very well. And what he's doing is he's destructing our country step by step by step. And we can't let this go on. And I don't know how we're going to stop it, except to remove the treasonous Republicans in the Congress that are going along with his program. And it's just not right, Tammy.
Ron, you're calling on the Republican line.
Then came the callers. The segment opened the phone lines, and the truth poured in. Donald from Arizona, a 76-year-old man, angry, confused, afraid. He said Trump had no right to access his Social Security data. He said the president was trying to pull a Putin, organize military parades while the country struggles to afford school lunches. It was raw, it was honest, and it was ignored by mainstream pundits. Then came Ron from California, a Republican. He criticized the tariffs, said they shattered global supply chains, warned that Trump was not building systems, but dismantling them step by step, institution by institutio. These were not liberals calling to vent. These were citizens, some of whom once supported this administration, now watching it turn on the very foundations they believed in. They are not enemies, they are not trolls. They are the soul of this country, calling out into the void, hoping someone is listening. And we are, because this is where democracy still breathes, not in the halls of Congress, but in the trembling voices of voters who still believe truth matters. What we saw in this 1 hour of C-SPAN was not just policy, it was a portrait of a nation drifting off course, a president rewriting blame, a budget that feeds military might but bleeds public needs, a court considering faith-based schools with public money, and a population trying to speak before it is silenced. This is not just analysis, this is a call to stay awake, to stay loud, to stay principled. The economy is not numbers on a chart. It is mothers choosing between food and medicine. The Constitution is not a trophy to hold, it is a boundary to protect. And journalism is not an enemy. It is the last line between you and the abyss. We do not need more noise, we need clarity. We do not need blind loyalty, we need courage. Because in this moment, what we need most is a voice of conscience, uncompromising, unbought, and unafraid. And that is what Max Justice will always be. This breakdown is based on public footage aired by C-SPAN under fair use for the purpose of political analysis and commentary. All rights to the original broadcast remain with their respective holders. New videos premiere daily at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.